jam-packed weekend of sports. And if you're a sports fan, you live for this. You've got the baseball playoffs. We are down to the Final Four. Congratulations to the Houston Astros. As we told you yesterday right here on this program, that would be the case. Gerrit Cole going out and dominating, and really the Rays had no answers. And they're to be applauded just to getting this thing to a fifth game as far as I'm concerned. And they really had themselves a great season. And there's nothing to feel sorry about losing to a guy like Gerrit Cole when he's at the top of his game, which he has been all season long. Gerrit Cole's best pitcher in baseball right now in 2019. And that is a big feather in the cap to the Houston Astros. So Astros, Yankees, blockbuster ALCS. That'll happen tomorrow in Houston. Tonight you got the National League side of things with the Nats and the Cardinals from St. Louis. Our ESPN MLB analyst, Tim Kirkchin, will join us a little bit later on in the program. We'll go through all of the baseball. Week 6 in the NFL got underway last night in Foxborough. Giants hung around for probably a lot longer than maybe we all thought they were going to, certainly myself. And they put up a decent showing, but the Patriots were just too much. If the Giants, as shorthanded as they were going to go up there and pull that upset, they had to play a near-perfect game, and it just didn't happen. And Daniel Jones was exposed a little bit because, after all, he was making just, his fourth start in the National Football League, and especially on a short week against that football team. That was a tall order. And the Patriots moved to 6-0. Got all the college football we got to get to this weekend. So we are jam-packed here on this busy Friday. And again, if you want to hit me up on Twitter, feel free to do so at Dan Graca. And it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. And I guess we'll start off here with the baseball last night, and we'll get that out of the way here. Props to the Houston Astros. They struck first, they struck early, they struck often, and you give Gerrit Cole a 4-0 lead in a winner-take-all game in his ballpark. Generally, you're going to be feeling pretty good about yourselves. This wasn't going to be any situation where you had the Dodgers blowing an early lead like a couple of nights ago, because this guy was going to get you to the finish line, and he pretty much put the team on his shoulders. I thought it was also very important to see a guy like Michael Brantley break out in a way last night to get a couple of big knocks in that baseball game, because Brantley has been pretty quiet here in this postseason, and that is a huge contributor for that Houston Astros lineup, especially right there in the middle of the order. Springer got a hit last night. You want to see him get going a little bit. Now, if they can only get Correa going, then this team would really be firing on all cylinders. But the Astros are a very, very dangerous baseball team. And you can't script things last night any easier if you're A.J. Hinch. That must be a nice luxury to have. You have an ace pitcher, you have a horse, you give him the baseball and say, take us home. And that's what Gerrit Cole did. Now, unfortunately, though, it came at a price, though, for the Astros when you're looking ahead to this next series against the New York Yankees, because now Cole is not going to be able to pitch until game number 3. If it goes the distance, you got Cole in game 3, you got Cole in game 7. So you like your chances there. Plus, you're going to get game 7 in your ballpark if you're the Houston Astros. So that's got to give you a little bit of confidence here. And, we can already begin to think about and speculate the kind of contract that Gerrit Cole is going to get in the offseason here. He is going to set the marketplace for free agency when it comes to starting pitchers. If I'm Gerrit Cole and his agent, when I take meetings and set them up all throughout the winter, I'm basically putting a sign on the desk that says, leave your blank checks right here, and just have them piled up, right, with the different signage and all that stuff for the different baseball teams, whether it's going to be a Yankees check, a Cubs check, a Dodgers check, whoever it is. But just leave the blank check and you let Gerrit Cole name his price, because he is pitched certainly worthy of getting an astronomical deal from whoever that's going to be. He can name his price. So now the series that we thought was going to happen and we were on a collision course for all season long in Major League Baseball is reality. Yanks, Stros, two best teams probably in the entire sport, now battling for the American League pennant tomorrow night there in Houston, and I cannot wait. And why is it important that this series starts in Houston? Because generally speaking, when these two teams play, the home field is that important. If you remember a couple of years ago when they met up in the ALCS, every home team won every single game in that series. When they played head-to-head this year, even though I don't like to put a lot of stock into the regular season, the home team won all but one matchup between the Stros, between the Yankees. And I can't wait to get this thing started. You know that Zach Greinke is going to be the guy in game number 1 for Houston. We'll find out a little bit later on today how Aaron Boone is going to set up his rotation. He's going to speak later on this afternoon in Houston, right before the Yankees workout. So who better to talk about all this Yankee stuff with than my good buddy, of course, from 98.7 ESPN in New York, Chris Canty, who's joining me now. CC, what's going on, my friend? You got to be pumped that your Yankees came through here.
Absolutely. I'd rather have the ALCS kicking off this weekend in the Bronx, but nonetheless, we get the matchup that everybody's been anticipating all season long. The Yankees wrapped up the AL East back in the end of July, so we knew that this was going to be a collision course with the Astros and the Yankees, and it's finally here.
Now, I know you were rooting for the Tampa Bay Rays last night. I knew as a Yankee fan, and all Yankee fans should have been rooting for the Tampa Bay Rays. Did you really go into that game with a legitimate amount of hope that maybe they can pull that upset?
No, I mean, how could you after Garrett Cole had the game 2 that he had in the DS where he has 15 strikeouts? And of course, the Houston Astros, they don't lose at home in the regular season. They were 60-21, and they've won 3 games down there in the postseason. So it's a tough out when you're down there at Minute Maid Park. And so I kind of knew that the Astros would advance, but that still doesn't keep me from hoping that the Rays found a way to pull that one out.
Now, the big intrigue here from the Yankees side of things, I was just talking about this before you hopped on here, but how is Aaron Boone going to line up those 3 starting pitchers, okay? We know the first 2 games are going to be in Houston here. Tanaka, Paxton, Severino, those are going to be the 3 big guys here. If you're asking me, CC, I actually think that Severino should get one of those 2 starts on the road. He's had a history of pitching well in that ballpark. James Paxton has as well, but Masahiro Tanaka, I think, is my best big game pitcher. I want Tanaka pitching number 1, and then it's a toss of the coin what I would do game number 2.
Well, and I understand your logic. I would say that I probably touched Tanaka out of that group of 3 right there the most. But Paxton and Severino have the swing and miss stuff. And when you're talking about trying to navigate through that Astros lineup, you need guys that can throw strikes and guys that can make those batters miss. So I guess that would be the conversation that Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman are having. I know that you try to set things up where you give yourself the best chance to be able to try to steal a game early on in this series. But, I mean, the fact of the matter is you're going to have to win those 3 home games when we come to the Bronx. And so you try to put together your pitching staff and set it up where you have the guy that you feel confident in that's going to be able to try to get you one of those games. To me, it would seem like it would be Tanaka, but Tanaka is a better pitcher in Yankee Stadium than he is on the road.
You're right about that. I mean, it's almost like a 2-to-1 split there when you're looking at his splits there, home and away. He's got an ERA over 6 away from Yankee Stadium. But I think October, you throw all that stuff out the window because Tanaka's value to this baseball team over the years has been more of the money pitcher in October. Not to say that he's been a bum in the regular season, but we know that how proven he is this time of year. And when the postseason started, Chris, right, all Yankee fans were sitting there looking at Severino because you hardly saw him all season long. What was he going to be able to give you? How would he be able to maybe stretch out and pitch maybe into, let's say, the 6th inning even in that postseason game? And even though he didn't go long into the game in Minnesota, the fact that he worked out of trouble, the fact that he got at a bases-loaded jam there early in that baseball game showed me that this guy is all ready to pitch in big-money situations. And that's why I would have no reservations whatsoever in giving him the baseball no matter where it is here against the Astros.
Yeah, you're talking about that game 3 against the Twins, bases juiced in the 2nd inning, no outs, and he finds a way to get Sano to pop out, then he strikes out the next 2 batters. I mean, Severino does have the stuff when he's right to be able to get anybody out, and you're going to need him to pitch like that if you're going to have a chance to beat the Astros. But ultimately, this series is not going to come down to the starting pitching for the Yankees. That's not going to be the difference maker. You're just hoping that the starting pitching can keep it close enough where you can get into the bullpen of that Astros team. If it becomes a game of bullpens, then you know that's advantage Yankees. So to me, the series is going to hinge on which lineup is going to be able to chase the opposing starting pitcher the quickest. That means the Yankees putting together a disciplined approach, 1 through 9, those guys putting together professional at-bats. If they can do that better than the Astros lineup, then I like the Yankees' chances.
And you look at the lineups, too, just from a contrast with this Houston Astros group versus what the Yankees just saw there with the Minnesota Twins. I mean, the Minnesota Twins, they hunt fastballs, they hit home runs. They didn't really strike out that often, but they did against the Yankees. Astros, on the other hand, they hardly strike out at all. So that's the challenge here. You don't necessarily have to be a bunch of flamethrowers up there and try to throw it, high 90s and break the radar gun attacking this Astros lineup. They're a disciplined group. They're a patient group, and that's why they give you so many fits, and there's really no let up 1 through 9 in this batting order. It's going to be tough.
No, it's going to be tough, man. And you saw Jose Altuve and what he did in this series against the Rays. I mean, they've got a really tough lineup to navigate. I mean, you like all of their guys because they can hit for power, they can hit for average, but they're going to put the ball in play. And so you recognize that your defense behind your pitching is going to have to be up to par if they're the Yankees. You can't afford to give a lineup like the Astros extra outs. And so that's also something that fans should be watching for in this game. But I mean, the way that the Yankees flipped the switch after limping to the finish line in the regular season and then turning it on and sweeping a 100-win Twins team, I mean, it never happened before in baseball, a 100-win team being swept in the DS. So, I mean, the fact that they were able to do that, that just tells me that there's something special about this Yankees team.
I think there's something special about both of these teams, and that's why this is going to be a great matchup, and that's why I would not be surprised at all if it goes the distance. You know, we could give our picks a little bit later on here, but, you know, I think that if you're the Yankees and if you're Aaron Boone, I think you might even be able to take a page from Kevin Cash's playbook with the Tampa Bay Rays as to how he went about dealing with that Houston Astros lineup. Because, look, we know the Astros are all about their power pitching, those first three guys there at the front, and they try to ride those guys as long as possible each time out. Yankees, even though you have the three starters at the front, CZ, I don't necessarily think that Aaron Boone is married to the idea that you have to go deep into ball games with them because you have a strength in the bullpen. And the way you saw Tampa Bay win that game 4, you get the early lead. I mean, you made it a bullpen game, and he just mixed and matched and gave the opposition so many different things to look at. Remember, no Astros hitter saw the same pitcher more than once in that baseball game. So because the Yankees have some depth in that pen, I could easily see Aaron Boone maybe going with that strategy for one of these games, maybe even a game 4. As to who's going to even start it, we have no idea.
Yeah, Dan, no doubt Aaron Boone is going to have a quick hook. If one of his pitchers gets in trouble, he's going to get that guy out of there. There won't be a repeat of what happened in Game 3 and Game 4 of the DS in 2018 when CC Sabathia and Severino let things get out of hand early in those games. So I don't see that. I think Aaron Boone's goal is to try to keep this thing as close as possible. And ideally, your starting pitcher would be able to get you through that lineup twice, but I don't think Aaron Boone is going to ask those starting pitchers to be able to do anything more than that, because the analytics show you that when batters see the same pitcher for a third time, they're going to be that much better in terms of average and getting on base. So I think the most important thing for the starting pitching for the Yankees is just don't let it get out of hand early. Keep the game close and allow your lineup to be able to have the same approach going against those starting pitchers from the Astros. When your lineup is not trying to do too much, when those guys are willing to pass the baton to the next guy, then I think that lineup puts themselves in good position to be able to put a lot of pitches on those starters from the Astros. And again, if you can get into their bullpen, that's when the Yankees will have an advantage.
Yeah, and as we saw last night, too, from Tyler Glasnow, make sure you're not tipping your pitches, too, because the Astros were all over that, and that played into their hands.
Yeah, that helps.
That helps. It's amazing what self-scouting can do these days, isn't it? But, you know, the last thing here when it comes to the Yankees is how they're going to set up this roster for the LCS. They have until tomorrow morning to go public with it here. And, you know, there's a couple of guys who weren't included in the previous round. CC Sabathia is one of them. The other guy is Aaron Hicks, who for the longest time, I mean, shoot, it looked like he was never going to play baseball again this year because of the elbow. He might have needed Tommy John surgery. Who knows? I've kind of gone a 180 with this whole thing with Aaron Hicks. At first, I was like, you know what? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's no need to put him in. But right now, I'm kind of like, you know what? What do you have to lose? He's a capable bat. You know that he's going to make you stronger defensively when you have him in center field. I say roll the dice. You hope he stays healthy. What do you think?
Well, I think that's what the Yankees will do, and I just had the privilege of talking to the voice of the Yankees, Michael Kay, who works on 98.7 ESPN here in New York, and he said that he strongly feels like Aaron Hicks will be a part of this CS postseason roster. And so I like Aaron Hicks. I mean, you know he's a plus defender. And then the fact that he gives you some flexibility in terms of being able to be a switch hitter, I just feel really confident about his ability to put together quality at-bats, his ability to be able to get on base. And that's what you need, right? The Yankees, we all know that they're going to live and die by being able to hit home runs. But I also think that you got to be able to create traffic on the bases in order to get good scoring opportunities. And so I think that having that type of availability, I think, is important. So if you have Aaron Hicks and he's able to play center field, you put Brett Gardner in left field, and you have Aaron Judge in right field, you have a pretty good defensive outfield. So I feel I feel really good about Aaron Hicks being a part of this postseason roster. Also, CeCe Sabathia is somebody that I think the Yankees would like to have on this postseason roster as well. Keep in mind he was left off of the DS roster, so hopefully those two guys will be included in the roster that the Yankees unveil tomorrow morning.
I agree with you for sure. So game one gets underway Saturday night. Yanks and Stros from Houston. You can hear every single pitch of the series, of course, on ESPN radio. Now let's jump over to the football team here in New York who took the field last night in Foxborough. And look, we knew going in, as shorthanded as the Giants were, they were going to have to play close to a perfect game to even hang with the Patriots. And for a half, they pretty much did so. Heck, it was even a 7-point game only going into the fourth quarter. But the flaws started to mount. Daniel Jones, I think, maybe tried to do a little too much given the weapons that he was without. And as we've seen many, many times before, young quarterback in that building against that coach, there's going to be a price to pay, and I think that the Giants saw that.
Well, yeah, going into that game, the Patriots and Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, I mean, since 2014, they're 7-0, make that 8-0 after last night's result against rookie quarterbacks. And then, of course, they're 12-0 all-time against rookie quarterbacks in Foxborough. So it's going to be tough on a young quarterback. Bill Belichick did a great job of winning that cat and mouse game between Pat Shurmur and Daniel Jones, throwing some different looks, some different coverages at him early in that game. A lot of man coverage in the first half, came back with some zone coverage in the second half, forced that mistake, that interception to Stephon Gilmore in that third quarter. But, I mean, that's what Bill Belichick is capable of doing. And so when you recognize that Daniel Jones was shorthanded in terms of the skill position players that he had available, no Saquon Barkley, no Sterling Shepard, no Evan Ingram, you can understand why the kid would press a little bit. And when you're in that situation on the road in a short week, you know the inevitable result. You're probably going to lose that game.
Yeah, and I know that it didn't affect the outcome of the game. And look, you can have a mixed opinion here on Pat Shurmur. I think a lot of people do in terms of him being the right head coach for this football team. And look, Bill Belichick, I don't think is making this current Giants team, a championship caliber squad in any way, shape, or form. But still, Pat Shurmur does some things, Chris, that really make me scratch my head. Like last night, deciding to punt for it when it was still a 2-touchdown game. What was it, 4th and 2? There was about 7 minutes left. He decides to kick the football away. And after the game, he just simply said, I felt that it was the right thing to do. Okay, fine. If you wanted to punt the football there, that's fine. But then how come afterwards, Patriots score, so they go up by 21. Then with only a couple minutes left in the game, when you don't have any chance to win, he decides to challenge a pass interference call, which you don't get anyway. So why challenge the pass interference call, but yet not go for it on 4th down? It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I have no idea what he was thinking on that decision not to go for it on 4th and 2. To me, that was the game. To kick the ball back to Bill Belichick and Tom Brady with 7 minutes to go in that ball game, you know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to take their eye out of the football. They're going to leave you with no time left on the clock. So to me, you got to make the decision to go for it. But even if you feel like in that situation you're going to punt it away on 4th down, why not run a passing play where you have routes at the sticks on 3rd down? Why heave it 40 yards in the air on 3rd down and 2 when you don't need, you only need 2 yards in order to convert and keep the drive alive? That didn't make any sense to me. And then, of course, with him challenging plays, he's over when it comes to those challenges with pass interference. So I just feel like it was some mismanagement on Pat Shurmur's behalf. But look, I got to give credit where credit is due. That Giants team was outmanned in terms of talent and, of course, with experience. And the fact that they were able to make that a one-possession game up until about 8.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, I think you got to count that as a positive. I'm not going to say that there are moral victories because there are none in the National Football League, but I do think there are some positives that you can take away from this game if you're a Giants fan. The fact that this team was willing to punch back, the fact that Daniel Jones did throw that touchdown pass to Golden Tate in the second quarter when you had a double-digit deficit, I think those are some characteristics that you like to see from a young team that's trying to develop.
Yeah, and, Golden Tate, here's the only thing. We could do without the backpedaling into the end zone either. It's not like Golden Tate missed the first 4 games because he had a sprained ankle. Golden, you're coming off a suspension here, okay? Lay low, catch the ball, go into the end zone, and do what you're supposed to do. I didn't need to see all the showboating and stuff like that, especially in a game where you know that you're short-handed going up against that football team. That's one thing I didn't need to see, Chris. But, I'll give you a positive, though, from last night. I really do like the way that defense came to play. Think about it. Out of those 35 points, one was a special teams touchdown. The other was a defensive touchdown there on the scoop and score. I think that James Betcher has those guys playing aggressive. I really like that unit, which I didn't have a lot of high expectations for coming into the season. I thought to show me some stuff here as each week progresses.
Yeah, and they've had a lot of guys in and out of the lineup. They got Alec Ogletree back yesterday, so that's a step in the right direction. But you're right, Dan. I mean, this is a group that struggled early on in the season, but in the last 4 games, they've been opportunistic. They've forced 8 turnovers, and if you include the turnovers on downs, that's 2 more that you can add from last night's total. So I just feel like this group, even though they're trying to figure things out, even though there's a learning curve because this is the first go-round for a lot of guys on that side of the ball, I think that if you continue to take the football away at this rate, you're always going to give yourself a chance. You saw the play that Jabril Peppers made last week against the Vikings when he punched the ball out of Dalvin Cook's hand as he got down to the goal line. That's a 7-point play right there. So the fact that this defense is doing that, the fact that you saw Lorenzo Carter flash last night with the strip sack that led to Marcus Golden running it in for a touchdown, those are all positives. And the fact that it's your young guys that are doing it, I think that's going to bode well for the Giants as we get to the second half of the season.
All right, Chris, before we say goodbye, let's fast forward here to Sunday. The other team in New York with the Jets, they get number 14 back under center, thankfully, against the Dallas Cowboys. You know, Dallas licking their wounds a little bit, losing a couple of games here. They want to right the ship, but they're banged up a little bit on that offensive line. We'll see which of the tackles are able to play here. But even though the Jets are still far from a complete football team in terms of available bodies, how much of a boost do you think it'll mean for them just to be able to get Darnold, their guy, their beacon of light, back into the lineup here on Sunday?
I think it's a huge boost from a morale standpoint, but I don't know how tangible that's going to be in terms of dictating the results of Sunday's game. Like, I just don't think all of the problems on the offensive side of the ball for the Jets are all about Sam Darnold not being available to be under center. I think that they've got a lot of issues, especially up front with their offensive line. I mean, last week they allowed 10 sacks to the Philadelphia Eagles, and that was an Eagles defense going into that game that had only had 3 sacks on the season. So I just feel like there's a lot of improvement that needs to be made in terms of that offensive line getting better in order for that offense to take the next step and become competent. But as far as what's going on with this Jets team and the defensive side of the ball, the defense keeps fighting. The defense is trying to give the offense time to catch up and figure it out. It just hasn't happened yet, and that's a little bit of a head scratcher, seeing as how your head coach Adam Gase's background is on the offensive side of the ball. They've got to look competent. To this point in the season, the offense has looked completely inept.
And you know what the funny thing is like you would normally say when you're going up against the Dallas Cowboys, from a defensive game planning point of view, you almost want to take a page out of what the Green Bay Packers did last week, right? Because they jumped out to that huge early lead, which made the Cowboys' offense one-dimensional. It took Ezekiel Elliott out of things, so they almost had to stop running the ball. And then Dak went crazy, throwing it all around the yard. And we know that that is a little bit of a vulnerability as far as the Jets are concerned when it comes to stopping the opposing team throwing the ball. So that would concern me, I think, in a big way on Sunday as well.
No, it would concern you. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys are a team that wants to control time of possession. They want to slow it down with the ground game. And so you would think if you want to give yourself a chance to beat them, you would try to do the opposite. You would try to control time of possession. You would try to get up on them early and then force Dak Prescott to throw them back in the game. The only problem is the Jets offense can't move the ball. I mean, in the last 3 games, they're 5 for 40 on third downs. If you can't stay on the field, if you can't sustain drives, you're going to have a hard time putting yourself in position to be able to score points. And so the Jets just haven't been able to do that. And for that reason, I think it's a matter of if, not when, the Dallas Cowboys take control of that game on Sunday. As hard as the Jets defense fights, I think the Dallas Cowboys, they'll figure it out on the offensive side of the ball. Keep in mind, the last 2 weeks, Zeke Elliott has been kept in check with that ground game. I'm looking for the Dallas Cowboys to come in with an emphasis on being able to get back to the basics, get back to what they do best, which is run the football.
Yeah, because now Philadelphia seems to be figuring things out, and I'm sure the Cowboys keep an eye on them now the fact that they've lost a couple of games. Chris, this was a lot of fun, my friend. I know you got to run. Have yourself a great weekend. We'll do it again soon, bud.
All right, thanks for having me on, Dan.
All right, there's our buddy Chris Canty there at 98.7 ESPN. And this was Straight Talk Wireless. Everything for less, and it is only at Walmart. Coming up, we'll get more into the football of Week 6 in the National Football League. We've got a lot of good games on the schedule. We'll do some college a little bit later on, too. You got a good round of games coming up on Saturday, but we'll rewind again to last night specifically with the Giants and the Patriots. We talked a lot about it from the New York side of things. What about it from the Patriots? Because there's already these whispers circulating that, yeah, the Patriots are 6-0, but are they really as good as their record, even though they've won all those Super Bowls? Have they really played teams that have tested them enough? We'll talk about that coming up next year. Tim Kirchin joins me at 2 to talk about the baseball. Stan Graca in for Stephen A. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio and ESPN News.
The satisfying crunch of Nature Valley Crunchy Bars can keep your family going.